Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. And today, we're going to be looking at something, it might sound a little dry at first, but I think it's incredibly relevant to all of us. We're talking about organizational health and the kind of thing that can make or break a company. And we're going to take a lot of our cues from the book, The Advantage, today to get to the heart of this.
Yeah, it is interesting because a lot of times we get caught up in all the surface level stuff, the strategies, the marketing campaigns, the bottom line. But what really sets apart successful companies is something much deeper. And a lot of times goes unnoticed until it's too late.
Yeah, it's like that saying, one rotten apple spoils the whole bunch.
Yeah.
You can have the best product in the world, the most talented people.
Yeah.
But if that underlying culture is toxic, you can poison the whole thing.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that this decay often happens so slowly and subtly, almost invisibly. Companies can, project this image of competence, while internally, they're riddled with dysfunction. Think about those meetings where nothing gets decided, where people are agreeing on the surface, but secretly disagreeing, where politics overshadow performance.
Yeah, I think we've all been in those meetings. It's like everyone's rowing, diving to different directions, and the boat's just going in circles.
And that's a classic sign of a company that is really struggling with organizational health. It's like having a Formula One car with the dysfunctional pit crew, all that potential, but it can't reach its full potential because the internal workings are out of sync.
So if this organizational health is so crucial, what does it actually look like? How can you tell if a company has it?
Wow. One of the key indicators is cohesion, particularly within the leadership team. Think about championship sports teams, the ones that consistently win. It's not just about individual talent, it's about their incredible synergy as a team. They trust each other, communicate openly, have each other's backs, even under pressure.
So you're saying that even if a company has a mediocre strategy, they can still win if they have a healthy, cohesive culture?
Absolutely, because ultimately, execution depends on people. And when people are aligned, trust each other, and are working towards a common goal, they can overcome almost any obstacle. On the flip side, a toxic culture can drag down even the most brilliant strategy.
That makes total sense. But how do you actually build that kind of cohesion, especially when you have a leadership team?
With strong personalities, differing opinions. It can't always be sunshine and rainbows. Right. Healthy conflict is actually crucial for a high-performing team. Now, we're not talking about personal attacks or destructive arguments, but rather a willingness to engage in, passionate debate where different perspectives are challenged and refined.
So it's about being able to disagree constructively without letting it devolve into, personal animosity.
Exactly. Because if you're always avoiding conflict, you're probably avoiding making tough decisions. And ultimately, you're avoiding real progress.
But disagreeing is one thing. How do you make sure everyone is actually on board with the final decision, especially when not everyone might agree 100%?
That's where commitment comes in. In a healthy organization, once a decision is made, even if you don't completely agree with it, you commit to supporting it fully. Now, this isn't about blind obedience. It's about recognizing that alignment is more important than consensus.
So it's like trusting the process, even when you might have preferred a different outcome.
Exactly. You trust that. The decision-making process was sound. You trust your fellow leaders, and you commit to making the decision work. This kind of commitment is what allows organizations to move forward decisively and avoid getting bogged down in, endless debate.
That makes a lot of sense. But commitment without accountability can easily become complacency, right? How do you ensure that people are actually following through, delivering on their commitments?
That's where accountability comes into play. And this can be one of the trickiest aspects of building a healthy team. It's about having those tough conversations when performance isn't meeting expectations. And it requires a culture of trust and mutual respect.
So it's not about being punitive or playing the blame game, but rather about having open and honest conversations aimed at improvement.
Exactly. Think of it like a sports team where players push each other to excel. If someone's slacking off, their teammates will hold them accountable, not to punish them, but to help them improve and contribute to the team's success.
It's about caring enough to have those difficult conversations, knowing that ultimately it's for the benefit of the entire team.
Exactly. And ultimately, a healthy team is one that's focused on collective results, not individual glory. It's about understanding that everyone wins when the team wins. And that requires putting aside egos and personal agendas in service of a common goal.
So it's about recognizing
Yes.
that the success of the team is ultimately everyone's success.
Absolutely. When everyone is pulling in the same direction, the power of that collective effort is truly unstoppable.
This all sounds great in theory, but I'm curious, how does this actually play out in the real world? What are the practical steps companies can take to cultivate this kind of healthy environment?
Well, it all starts with clarity. You can have the best intentions, most talented people. But if there's a lack of clarity about the company's mission, values, and goals, you're going to end up with confusion, frustration, and wasted effort.
It's like that saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Exactly. And one of the biggest mistakes leaders make is assuming that because something is clear to them, it's clear to everyone else. But in reality, most organizations suffer from ambiguity, not incompetence.
So how do you overcome
Yeah.
this curse of knowledge and make sure everyone is on the same page?
It starts by answering 6 fundamental questions, clearly and consistently. These questions cover everything from the company's purpose, to its strategy, to the roles and responsibilities of individuals.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's dive into those 6 questions. I have a feeling this is where things get really practical and applicable to our everyday work lives.
So the first, and arguably the most important question, is why do we exist? And I'm not just talking about making a profit. It's about defining your company's deeper purpose, its reason for being.
So it's about figuring out what unique value you bring to the world, beyond just selling a product or service.
Exactly. Think about a restaurant. That's not just serving food, but fostering a sense of community in their neighborhood. Or a tech company. That's not just building software, but revolutionizing the way people connect.
That's a great point. It's about connecting to a deeper purpose that gives meaning to the work and inspires people to go the extra mile.
Absolutely. And the second question is all about behavior. How do we behave? Every company has core values. But the real question is, are those values reflected in actions, not just words?
So it's not enough to just have a fancy mission statement hanging on the wall. You have to actually live those values in every decision you make, every interaction you have.
Exactly, because actions speak louder than words. And if there's a disconnect between what you say you believe and how you actually behave, you create a breeding ground for cynicism and distrust.
So it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Precisely. The third question is deceptively simple, what we do. You'd think this would be easy to answer, but you'd be surprised how many companies struggle to define their core business in a clear, concise way.
It's about cutting through the jargon and explaining what you do in a way that anyone can understand. You have to think about that elevator pitch. If you can't articulate your business clearly, in 30 seconds, you've got some work to do.
Exactly. It's about clarity over cleverness. Now, the fourth question is all about strategy. How will we succeed? This is where you define your roadmap for achieving your goals.
So it's not just about having a vague aspiration, but rather about identifying concrete steps and priorities that will drive success.
Exactly. It's about having a clear set of strategic anchors, those guiding principles that inform every decision and keep everyone aligned. Think about an airline whose strategic anchors might be safety first always, lowest fares, no frills, and an unwavering focus on customer service.
That's a great example. When you have those clear anchors, it makes decision-making so much easier because you're constantly filtering everything through those lenses.
The fifth question is about focus. What is most important right now? The most successful companies understand the power of having a single unifying rallying cry that aligns everyone towards a common goal.
So it's about identifying that one crucial priority that will make the biggest impact and saying this is what we're all in on for the next quarter, for the next year.
Exactly. It's about focus and alignment. Because when everyone is rowing in the same direction, you generate incredible momentum. And the sixth and final question is all about roles and responsibilities. Who must do what?
This one seems pretty straightforward, but I imagine there's more to it than meets the eye.
Right. Because it's not just about having a job description. It's about making sure that everyone understands their role within the context of the team and the overall strategy. It's about knowing who's accountable for what, who makes the final decisions, and how everything fits together.
So it's about creating that clarity of responsibility, which eliminates confusion, finger-pointing, and a wasted effort.
Exactly. When everyone knows their role and how it contributes to the bigger picture, you create a sense of ownership, accountability, and shared responsibility for success.
These 6 questions are so insightful because they force you to get really clear about what you stand for and where you're going as an organization. But I imagine it's not enough to just Answer them once,
Yeah.
and then file them away.
You're absolutely right. It's about making sure that these answers are consistently communicated and reinforced throughout the organization. And that's where the next discipline comes in. Over-communicating clarity. You know, it's funny how often companies announce these big, exciting visions, but then nothing really changes. It's like the initial buzz fades away, and everyone just goes back to business as usual.
I've definitely seen that. It's like there's this disconnect between the grand pronouncements and the day-to-day reality. What causes that, you think?
Well, a lot of times it boils down to a failure to over-communicate. Leaders might assume that just because they've said something once or twice, everyone understands and remembers it. But the reality is messages get lost, diluted, or misinterpreted amidst all the daily noise.
It's like shouting something important in a crowded room and wondering why no one seems to have heard you.
Exactly. And think about it this way. We're constantly bombarded with information, distractions, competing priorities, so even the most important messages need to be repeated, reinforced, and delivered through multiple channels to truly sink in.
I guess that makes sense when you put it that way. But doesn't it get a bit repetitive? For leaders to constantly be hammering home the same messages, and wouldn't it get annoying for employees to hear the same things over and over again?
Well, repetition can be a very powerful tool, especially when it comes to communication. Think about political campaigns. The most effective candidates don't come up with dozens of different messages. They hammer home the same key points over and over again until they become ingrained in the public's consciousness.
It's like that saying, repetition is the mother of learning. But isn't there also a psychological barrier here? I remember reading somewhere about the curse of knowledge, where experts often struggle to explain things simply because they assume everyone else has the same level of understanding.
Absolutely. The curse of knowledge is that tendency we have to assume that what's obvious to us is obvious to everyone else. Leaders often forget that their teams may not be privy to all the information, discussions, and decision-making that led to a particular conclusion.
So how do we break free from that curse and communicate more effectively?
It starts with recognizing that leadership must be the primary source of clarity. If leaders aren't constantly reinforcing key messages, employees will inevitably fill in the gaps themselves. And those gaps are often filled with misinformation, assumptions, or confusion.
So it's not enough to just
Yeah.
delegate communication to a memo or an email.
Yeah.
Leaders have to embody clarity in everything they do, every interaction, every decision.
You're absolutely right. And it's not just about the CEO or the executive team. Every leader at every level of the organization needs to be able to articulate those 6 critical questions we discussed earlier in the exact same way. Consistency is key.
Okay, so we've got clarity through consistent messaging. What else is needed to build a healthy organization?
Well, communication is vital, but it's only part of the equation. You also need to align actions with words. Think about a company that claims to value work-life balance, but then glorifies employees who consistently work late nights and weekends. Or a company that preaches innovation, but then punishes employees for taking risks and making mistakes.
It's like saying one thing and doing another. That kind of disconnect breeds cynicism and distrust faster than anything.
Exactly. You can't just talk the talk. You have to walk the walk. And that means aligning your systems and processes with your core values and stated priorities.
So if you say you value collaboration, but then you reward individual achievement over team success, you're sending mixed messages, right?
Absolutely. And to truly embed clarity and build a healthy organization, you need to look beyond just communication and examine those underlying systems and processes that shape daily life.
Which systems are we talking about specifically?
There are 4 key systems
Yeah.
that need to be carefully scrutinized. Make sure they're reinforcing your desired culture. The first is hiring and onboarding.
Makes sense. If you want a team of people who embody your values and contribute to a healthy culture, you need to be really intentional about who you bring into the organization.
Right. Most companies focus primarily on skills and experience, which are obviously important. But cultural fit is just as crucial. If you say you value teamwork, but then hire a bunch of brilliant jerks, you're setting yourself up for failure.
It's like that saying, one bad apple spoils the bunch. But how do you actually screen for cultural fit during the hiring process?
It starts with being crystal clear about what your values are and what behaviors you expect from everyone. Then you need to design your hiring process to assess those qualities, ask behavioral questions that reveal how candidates have handled challenging situations in the past. Look for evidence of those values in their past experiences.
So don't just focus on what they've done. Dig deeper into how they've done it and why they made certain choices.
Exactly, and don't be afraid to reject even high-performing candidates who don't seem like a good cultural fit. It might be tough in the short term, but it's better to have an empty seat than to bring in someone who will disrupt the team dynamic.
That takes discipline, especially when you're under pressure, to fill a position quickly. It's tempting to prioritize skills over fit and think you can just train someone to adapt to your culture.
And while you can, certainly, coach and develop people, you know core values and behavioral patterns are pretty deeply ingrained. It's much easier to hire for those qualities than to try to change them later.
Okay, so we got hiring and onboarding. What's the next system that needs to be aligned with our values?
Performance management, it's all about making sure that your evaluation and reward systems are aligned with your stated priorities.
It's like that saying, what gets measured gets managed. If you want employees to prioritize certain behaviors or outcomes, you need to make sure you're actually measuring and rewarding those things.
Exactly. If you say you value customer satisfaction, but you only reward employees
For sales numbers.
it's what they're going to focus on.
Right. You get what you incentivize. So your performance reviews, promotions, and compensation systems all need to reflect the values and behaviors that you claim are important.
It's about sending a clear message about what's truly valued in the organization. And it's about recognizing and rewarding people for living those values, not just hitting their numbers.
Now, this next system might be a bit controversial because I think a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with it.
You're talking about meetings, right?
Yep. But I think we can all agree that meetings can be incredibly powerful tools. When they're done right, they can be opportunities to drive alignment, make decisions, and solve problems collaboratively.
Absolutely. Think of meetings as practice. For a sports team, you wouldn't expect a team to just show up on game day and perform flawlessly without having practiced and strategized beforehand. Meetings can serve that same purpose in a business context.
So instead of those dreaded meandering meetings that leave everyone feeling frustrated and unproductive, you need to create a system where meetings are focused, efficient, and actually drive the business forward.
Exactly. And it starts with recognizing that dysfunctional organizations tend to have terrible meetings. They're disorganized, unproductive, and often filled with conflict or apathy.
Whereas healthy organizations use meetings strategically to foster communication, collaboration, and decision-making.
Right. And there's a clear structure and purpose to each meeting. People know why they're there, what they're trying to achieve, and what their role is.
So what does a healthy meeting actually look like? In practice, what are the key elements?
Well, first and foremost, healthy meetings have a clear purpose and a defined agenda. Everyone knows why they're there and what they're trying to accomplish. There's no wasted time on tangents or rehashing old arguments.
But no more of those meetings where you leave feeling like you accomplished absolutely nothing.
Exactly. Healthy meetings are also focused, meaning they don't try to cover too many topics at once. They stick to a few key issues and make sure those get addressed thoroughly. It's about quality over quantity.
And they're action-oriented, right? You're not just discussing problems, you're actually solving them, coming up with concrete action items.
Absolutely. And each action item is assigned to a specific person with a clear deadline, so there's no confusion about who's responsible for what.
And finally, healthy meetings are engaging, right? People feel comfortable sharing their ideas, challenging assumptions, and having productive debates. There's a sense of
energy and shared purpose in the room.
Exactly. It's not about sitting there passively while someone drones on and on. It's about actively participating, contributing your ideas, and feeling like your voice is heard.
So it sounds like meetings can be a real litmus test for organizational health. If your meetings are dysfunctional, it's probably a sign that there are deeper issues that need to be addressed.
Absolutely. The way you conduct meetings reflects the overall health and culture of your organization. And the good news is, if you can improve your meetings, you can often improve your organization as a whole.
Now let's talk about that final system, human systems. I'll admit this one sounds a bit vague. Can you elaborate on what that encompasses?
So it's essentially all the policies, processes, and unwritten rules that shape daily life in an organization. Think about things like how performance reviews are conducted, how promotions are awarded, or how decisions are made. So it's about making sure that those systems are aligned with your values and are reinforcing the behaviors you want to see.
Exactly. If you say you value work-life balance, but you have a culture where people are expected to be online and available 24/7, you're sending mixed messages.
Or if you say you want to empower employees, but you have a decision-making process that's incredibly bureaucratic and top-down, it's going to create a lot of frustration and disengagement.
The key takeaway here is that clarity isn't just something you talk about. It's something you embed into the DNA of the organization through consistent, repeatable systems.
So it's not just about
Yeah.
what you say in a meeting or write a memo. It's about how you actually operate on a day-to-day basis. Your systems have to reflect your values if you want to build a truly healthy and sustainable organization.
Exactly. And that's how you turn clarity from a fleeting concept into an unbreakable reality. It's about aligning those systems with your values and making sure they're working for you, not against you.
This conversation is reminding me of something else I read about. How to gauge whether an organization is truly healthy. Just look at its meetings.
That's such a great point. It's like holding up a mirror to the organization. If your meetings are chaotic, unproductive, and filled with negativity, it's probably a reflection of deeper cultural issues.
But if your meetings are efficient, engaging, and productive, it's a good sign that you've got a healthy foundation in place.
Exactly. And the great thing is, meetings are something you can actually control and improve. It's a tangible lever you can pull to start shifting the culture in a more positive direction.
Okay, we've talked a lot about systems and processes, but let's shift gears and talk about that often elusive, yet incredibly powerful element.
Culture.
Ah, yes, culture. It's the secret sauce, the X factor that can make or break a company. And it's something that can't be easily replicated or copied.
You can try to imitate a product, you can match a price, but you can't just manufacture a company's culture. It's the sum total of all those small, intangible things that make an organization unique. And it's something that's built over time through consistent actions and behaviors. It's not something you can just announce or mandate.
So what are the key ingredients of a truly strong, healthy culture? Where does it all begin?
At its core, a healthy culture is built on trust.
That makes so much sense. When people trust each other, they're more likely to collaborate freely, share information openly, and take risks without fear of reprisal.
Exactly. Trust is the foundation for everything. It fuels speed, innovation, and accountability. In high-trust organizations, decisions get made faster. People are more willing to experiment and try new things, and they hold themselves and each other accountable, not out of fear, but out of a shared commitment to success.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. The clarity, the systems, the trust. It's like creating a virtuous cycle where each element reinforces the others. But how do you actually build that kind of trust? It's not something you can just force or fake.
Right. You're absolutely right. Trust has to be earned. And it starts with leaders modeling the right behaviors. It's about walking the talk, being transparent and honest, and following through on commitments.
So it's not about being perfect
Yeah.
or having all the answers. It's about being authentic and creating an environment where people feel safe, to be themselves, to make mistakes, and to learn from each other.
Exactly. And it's about celebrating successes together and supporting each other through failures. You know, trust is built through shared experiences, both good and bad.
It sounds like building a strong culture requires a lot of
Intentionality.
consistency and patience. It's not something that happens overnight.
You're right. It's an ongoing process. It's about making conscious choices every day to reinforce the values and behaviors you want to see in your organization. It's about weaving those values into the fabric of your culture so they become a part of who you are, not just something you talk about.
So much of what we've discussed feels intuitive, like common sense. And yet so many companies struggle with these very things. If creating a healthy culture is so beneficial, why isn't everyone doing it?
It's one of those things that's easier said than done. Building a strong culture requires a level of intentionality, discipline, and long-term commitment that many leaders simply aren't willing to invest. It's not a quick fix. It's an ongoing process of continuous improvement.
And it requires a willingness to look in the mirror and honestly assess where you're falling short. It's about being humble enough to admit that you don't have all the answers, that you need to constantly learn and adapt.
Exactly. And it requires a commitment to putting people first. You know, healthy cultures are built on a foundation of respect, trust, and psychological safety, where people feel valued, supported, and empowered to do their best work.
It's about creating an environment where people feel like they belong, where they can be themselves, and where they can contribute their unique talents and perspectives.
Yeah.
It sounds almost utopian.
It might sound idealistic, but it's absolutely achievable. And the companies that get this right, that truly prioritize culture, are the ones that consistently outperform their competitors.
It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
When you create a healthy, supportive environment, people naturally rise to the occasion. They're more engaged
More productive.
and more innovative.
Exactly. And they're also more likely to stick around. Strong cultures are a magnet for top talent, and they help companies retain their best people, which is a huge competitive advantage in today's market.
So if we're convinced that building a healthy culture is essential for success, where do we even begin? How do we start to shift the culture in a more positive direction?
We'll start by having honest conversations about your current culture. Gather feedback from your team. What's working well? What needs to change? Don't be afraid to. Ask the tough questions. And be open to hearing the answers, even if they're not what you want to hear.
So it's about getting a clear picture of your current reality, even if it's a little messy or uncomfortable.
Exactly. Once you have a shared understanding of where you are, you can start to define where you want to go, what kind of culture do you want to create, what are the values and behaviors that will drive success.
And don't try to boil the ocean. Start by identifying one or two areas for improvement and focus on making progress in those areas.
That's right. Small changes can have a ripple effect. And as you start to see positive results, it'll build momentum and inspire others to get on board.
It's about creating a sense of shared ownership and empowering people to be a part of the solution.
And don't forget to celebrate your successes along the way. Recognizing and rewarding positive behaviors reinforces the culture you're trying to build and motivates people to keep moving in the right direction.
It sounds like building a healthy culture is a journey, not a destination. It's an ongoing process of learning, adapting, and evolving.
That's a great way to put it. It's not about achieving some kind of perfect state. It's about creating a culture that's constantly striving to be better.
Well, this has been our deep dive into the power of organizational health. It's been a fascinating exploration of what truly makes companies thrive, from the importance of clarity and over-communication to the power of systems and the undeniable impact of culture.
And we've learned that building a healthy organization is a journey, not a destination. It's about making conscious choices every day to create an environment where people feel valued, supported, and inspired to do their best work.
We hope this deep dive has given you some actionable insights that you can apply in your own work and life. Remember, even small changes can make a big difference.
So as you go about your day, ask yourself, what can I do to create a more positive and productive environment for myself and those around me?
Because when you invest in culture, you invest in the long-term success
of your organization
and the well-being
of everyone in it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Speaker, to pouty, to be themselves, to make mistakes, and to learn from each other.
Exactly, and it's about celebrating successes together and supporting each other through failures. Trust is built through shared experiences, both good and bad.
It sounds like building a strong culture requires a lot of intentionality, consistency, and patience. It's not something that happens overnight.
You're right. It's an ongoing process. It's about making conscious choices every day to reinforce the values and behaviors you want to see in your organization. It's about weaving those values into the fabric of your culture so they become a part of who you are, not just something you talk about.
So much of what we've discussed feels intuitive, like common sense, and yet so many companies struggle with these very things. If creating a healthy culture is so beneficial, why isn't everyone doing it?
Well, it's one of those things that's easier said than done. Building a strong culture requires a level of intentionality, discipline, and long-term commitment that many leaders simply aren't willing to invest. It's not a quick fix. It's an ongoing process of continuous improvement.
And it requires a willingness to look in the mirror and honestly assess where you're falling short. It's about being humble enough to admit that you don't have all the answers and that you need to constantly learn and adapt.
Exactly. And it requires a commitment to putting people first. Healthy cultures are built on a foundation of respect, trust, and psychological safety, where people feel valued, supported, and empowered to do their best work.
It's about creating an environment where people feel like they belong, where they can be themselves, and where they can contribute their unique talents and perspectives. It sounds almost utopian.
It might sound idealistic, but it's absolutely achievable. And the companies that get this right, that truly prioritize culture, are the ones that consistently outperform their competitors.
It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you create a healthy, supportive environment, people naturally rise to the occasion. They're more engaged, more productive, and more innovative.
Exactly. And they're also more likely to stick around. Strong cultures are a magnet for top talent, and they help companies retain their best people, which is a huge competitive advantage in today's market.
So if we're convinced that building a healthy culture is essential for success, where do we even begin? How do we start to shift the culture in a more positive direction?
Start by having honest conversations about your current culture. Gather feedback from your team. What's working well? What needs to change? Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions and be open to hearing the answers, even if they're not what you want to hear.
So it's about getting a clear picture of your current reality, even if it's a little messy or uncomfortable.
Exactly. Once you have a shared understanding of where you are, you can start to define where you want to go. What kind of culture do you want to create? What are the values and behaviors that will drive success?
And don't try to boil the ocean. Start by identifying one or two areas for improvement and focus on making progress in those areas.
That's right. Small changes can have a ripple effect, and as you start to see positive results, it will build momentum and inspire others to get on board.
It's about creating a sense of shared ownership and empowering people to be a part of the solution.
And don't forget to celebrate your successes along the way. Recognizing and rewarding positive behaviors reinforces the culture you're trying to build and motivates people to keep moving in the right direction.
It sounds like building a healthy culture is a journey, not a destination. It's an ongoing process of learning, adapting, and evolving.
That's a great way to put it. It's not about achieving some kind of perfect state. It's about creating a culture that's constantly striving to be better.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the power of organizational health and what we learned from The Advantage. It's been a fascinating exploration of what truly makes companies thrive, from the importance of clarity and over-communication to the power of systems and the undeniable impact of culture.
And remember, building a healthy organization is a journey, not a destination. It's about making those conscious choices every day to create an environment where people feel valued, supported, and inspired to do their best work.
So as you go about your day today, think about this. What can I do to create a more positive and productive environment for myself and those around me?
Because when you invest in your culture, you invest in the long-term success of your organization and the well-being of everyone in it.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.